Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens defeated the 49ers in very convincing fashion at San Francisco in prime time. A Christmas miracle, some would say. I know that was the only thing I really wanted from the day, and it was a success. How did you guys feel after that big win, 33 to 19, 14-point differential?
Yeah, man. Great Christmas present. Obviously, as a fan, that was amazing to watch. Just incredible performance, both sides of the ball, particularly defense. It's amazing to watch so many impact plays, so many turnovers. Yeah, especially going into it. Obviously, we'll talk about it, but there was a lot of a lot of hype for the Niners. I think they're just a larger market team, and when they play really well, I think a lot of people want to talk about them. And they're still a great team. Even kind of looking at it too, like all their skill position players, like they all feasted in certain aspects. But the Ravens really made them pay when it counted, and with all the turnovers, I think just really deflated them. And they couldn't just put up points. So it was really cool as a fan. Just being really excited for the team to get a win on Christmas over a really great 49ers team. So I'm super psyched. It was hard to go to sleep last night. It felt like it was Christmas Eve, waiting for presents. But then I had to realize it's actually Christmas Day. It's over. Santa already came. He delivered. He delivered the presents and a Ravens victory. So
yeah. I mean, not to echo pretty much everything. I think it was like 2:30, and I was like, I think I need to go to sleep. I probably should. I got work in the morning, but found it difficult. And as for the game, super happy. That game probably went about as good as it could go, and I think this will carry us into hopefully the Miami game and to much bigger things.
For sure. I will say the impact on me, Kfisch, is that this is the game that broke my outlook on the season almost. I'm still like, all right, it's December. We got to stay healthy. We got to keep stacking. We got to get a win next week, all that good stuff. But I'm like, dang, dude, like maybe this team really can just beat anybody. Like I always believe that they can win. I always choose them to win, except for like literally this week, right? So now my streak's broken. If I choose them to lose, it means nothing. So it's like I always choose them to win because I always thought they were a well-built team, game plan well, can beat anybody on any given Sunday. And now it's like a lot of people think that. Vegas thinks that, like it's changing my view a little bit, and I'm like getting really excited about what the season could be. But I also really love the maturity of this team. They don't care, they don't. I actually almost find it interesting too, like the whole MVP conversation. Like they're starting to lean into it. Harbaugh has like said the words out loud, etc. But at the same time, like the star of the show, Lamar doesn't seem to care. He wants to just get to February, and I love that goal.
Yeah, certainly. I feel like I didn't really know much about the narrative going into the game. Obviously, knowing the Niners are a really good team, and it sounded like everybody was really high on them, and I understand that, but I didn't know to the extent that the team knew some of the discourse, I think, around some of the predictions going into the game. It was funny. I feel like Lamar's post-game comments about Florio's comments about how the Ravens were going to get steamrolled by the Niners. I was surprised he responded. And, he gave a really thoughtful response around just hey, it's not cool to disrespect us. We're professionals here, and, we can play ball. We're 11-3. We're a really good team. Why are you saying we're going to get rolled over? But even Marlowe, I think he mentioned something like they played them in team meetings. Now, whether that was actually true or not, I'm not sure. But I think the point is that the team, definitely acknowledges that they were the underdog, and they really leaned into that. And it's interesting where it's going to go from here, because now when you beat the champ, you're the champ now. So it's going to be interesting how that mentality continues to evolve, and players are going to keep focused, because right now they're top dog, right? They are no longer the underdogs. They have beaten everybody, and it's going to be especially important going into next week with Miami, because that's the that'll decide the number one seed. for the AFC and whether they get that first round bye that I assume that they're looking for.
Yeah, the narratives have been kind of wild. Even I would say that it's gone back a couple weeks now. I know they were running one episode of on First Take of is the Bill are the Bills the scariest team to see in the playoffs, and that was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the Ravens have kind of been doubted this whole time, and it just kind of bubbled up to this game, and you kind of see what that does. Kind of love this team. They just kept grinding. I mean, I think after all the talk about the media stuff, the Florio soundbite and all that is all fun to talk about because we stomped the 49ers. But funny enough, I was watching some of ESPN First Take, the Pat McCaffrey show this morning just to kind of see if stuff changed, and not all of them seem to want to lean into the Ravens still. So if Lamar likes that underdog talk, he's still going to have it. We're not going to have to do the we're the underdogs every time. They don't have to fake it. There's still a ton of doubt in the national media of the Ravens.
Kevin, tell me a little bit more about this doubt. I'm curious. What are they saying?
So Shannon Sharp said today, what happens when they're losing, knowing the fact that we were down to the Rams a couple weeks ago. Let's see, Sherman.
Sherman's been complaining about, I think, just like Lamar's MVP conversation.
Yeah, he's definitely been.
Which I mean, to be fair, I think is kind of legitimate from a statistical perspective. Like, I don't think that it's that far fetched. Now, obviously, he has a major impact that go beyond the stats. That is like definitely clear. But just from like a statistical perspective, like you look at it, like even if you throw in his rushing yards and like touchdowns, you're like, that's like, it's really off from even his MVP season a couple seasons ago.
I mean that. If you ignore the 1 yard rushes that Gus has for touchdowns, and he converts half of those into passing touchdowns, and now we have no story at all. So I mean, but yes, Sherman's been talking still. It didn't seem like First Take. It was their B team today this morning. A team still had Christmas off day after, but it didn't seem that much talk went into. Hey, the Ravens are good. Lamar is good. The 49ers didn't play well. Purdy didn't play well. So I think that even with the 30-plus points last night, they still don't believe.
That's still pretty wild, man. Like, even like the Bills, like, I mean, I did watch that game. But yeah, they were explosive again, but they were playing Chargers. Like, come on, they almost lost to the Chargers. I mean, like, as a team, we know that's imploding. Like, yeah, they played hard. Now that they finally got rid of Staley, I think the players, that's something they actually play for, and like, don't discount that, right? I think that's definitely a real thing. I mean, look at the Raiders against the Chiefs. I mean, like, the Chiefs are in real trouble right now. For kind of similar reasons. The Raiders are kind of, they have nothing to lose at this point. They've already lost their head coach. Like, they have no idea what the team's going to be like next year. But yeah, I mean, just like quality of opponent, man. Like, Niners are still a good team. Like, we'll get into it a little bit more, but like, even though the Ravens had such success of stopping their attack, like, they could pick up chunk plays really easily, and both in the run and in the pass game. I mean, McCaffrey was feasting, Kittle was feasting in the first quarter in particular. Ayuk was getting involved even late in the game. Debo had a couple of really good catches, and also really good, I guess, like, runs. Yak, after being slammed by Humphrey a couple of times, like, I mean, these guys were tough. And, even post game, I think it was like Marlo and a couple other people were just like, like, don't be fooled. Like, these guys are probably like the best test for us this year. I mean, super physical team. They play like us. It's just, we got the best of them tonight. But don't look at them as like chumps. It's just, just look at, it's more about just like, look at us. Like, look at how, we played real good. but don't overlook these guys. So, but yeah, that's weird. Like they still haven't kind of given the respect we need. But hey, that's cool. Team's gonna lean into that. So
yeah, my guess is that you look at a win like this, we had 5 interceptions. You don't normally see that, and how much is that a byproduct of exceptional play by your defense, or is it just like bad play by the offense or fluky stuff? I can understand why they might want to pump the brakes because there's such a gaudy outlier statistic involved in this game. But I mean, I saw how all those picks happened, and I thought they embodied a lot of what this team's all about. Before we got to talk about the defense, I want to do one last thing, like talking about the overall game, and that's how big of a win was this relative to other regular season games in franchise history. I mean, we had a little bit of a conversation before the show, and I feel like it's up there, man. Like, recency bias. Obviously, it wasn't a home game, but in a way that makes it more impactful. You did it on the road, on Christmas, no less. Prime time. It makes it maybe even a bigger game, and against historically high DVOA, which, by the way, we're now number 1. Ain't the beer cold? But I mean, we've never seen a matchup like this in a long time. I think as long as DVOA has been recorded.
Yeah, I guess we didn't talk about it, but obviously Peter's not recording with us. Family obligations because of the Christmas holiday. Merry Christmas, everybody! Happy holidays. But yeah, anyway, we were talking about this with him after the game last night. As you do with Peter, he's always very into the historical side of the Ravens, and always looking back at like games and trying to see like, oh yeah, like how's this compare like a game like 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, we're thinking about it, and like recently, like the only ones that maybe come close, that 2018 primetime game against the Chargers, that featured that was it, that Mark Andrews 64-yard touchdown or something. That was a pretty big one. But obviously, Chargers got the best of us in the playoffs in the wild card round. So, that one, like at the time, like, yeah, it was big, but, in the grand scheme of things, didn't amount to much. 2019 Seahawks, I guess we can't see it now because it's behind the 1-winning pod, but that's the Lamar picture right here, the 4th and 2. That was a big game. Obviously, Seahawks were really good, but it was a fairly early game in the season, so it didn't have quite the same weight as a game at Christmas. So that's not really the right one. And then 2006, a game against the Saints, that was another big one as well. I actually don't remember that one too much, but yeah, I mean, 2 teams 11-3 at Christmas, like 2 games left in the regular season. Like, I mean, that's got to be up there, like got to be top 5 in terms of like biggest road games. The only other ones like I can think of, I don't even think are that big in terms of like opponent, like that Monday night game against the Browns, that Lamar came back to win it. Like that was exciting. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't think the Browns were like, one of the best teams that the Ravens have faced that year. It just happened to be a really good game.
Yeah. When we were talking about this in the chat, the first one that came to mind was the Chiefs game at home, the night game. I know, yeah, that was super early in the season. I think that was week 3. I want to say that was week 2. Yeah,
Me too. Yeah.
but that one felt like a team we struggled to beat. We always found ways to kind of keep close, but it never got over that hump. And you had the OA strip of Edwards-Helaire, and I think we drove down the field to win that one. That one felt big. And then the other one that popped into my mind was the last game against Tom Brady and the Patriots, where Lamar kind of dominated that team. It was
also 2019.
Yeah. Running left and right and all over the place, and then just making stuff happen. That was supposed to be still a good team. Tom Brady was still there. That popped into my mind again. They probably didn't hold the weight that this one did, which was the best in the NFC versus the best in the AFC. Very late in the season, primetime game. Yeah, so I'm not sure I can think of one that really compares.
Actually, I've got one more. 2011 Steelers, the Torrey Smith redemption. I think that from a divisional perspective, I think was really big. And it was really big in that period of time because the Steelers were such big rivals at that point. Actually, because you mentioning the Chiefs, Kfisch, that kind of went back for me a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I think they realized that they could finally get the monkey off their back. They did beat them in Heinz Field the year before, 2010, with that Hushmanzada touchdown. But I think that 2011 game, I think also kind of was really solidified. Like, okay, yeah, we're here. We can do some damage. So I'll throw that in the ring. I think that could be a big one too. But in terms of, interconference matchup, I think the Niners game is up there for sure.
And maybe 2019 against the Niners, but I think this game definitely takes the cake. So we look at this defense, man, and they definitely did set the tone, I think, of the whole game. As we mentioned, the 5 interceptions, absolutely incredible. I kind of love that first one because I mentioned in the preview that, this whole offense stresses linebackers and safeties in the middle of the field there. And we saw early on they had success. And we have the best safeties and linebackers, in the league. And boom, Kyle Hamilton gets his first pick of the day. Ended up with 2 picks, which is outstanding. And really was a huge swing of events because at this point the Ravens were down. They were driving again, and they were about to score a touchdown. It looked like they were getting huge chunk plays, and then that just stopped them right in the end zone. That was a huge turn of events, and I would say probably the biggest impact turnover of the night.
It was huge in terms of game flow. I mean, yeah, they were down. Was it 5? Was it 2-0 or 5-0 at that point?
I know, because we can't come from behind it, but I digress.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, they had huge plays at that point to one to Kittle, I believe. And, another to McCaffrey, 13-yard run or something. They were in the red zone driving again. At that point would have been up 2 scores at least. And, I mean, it was fantastic play. And one, I feel like I want to give Kyle not only credit for the physical play of being able to make that, but to me that seemed like pure film study of a way to that's how you trick Purdy. Because I think on that play, if I believe they had, they had a concept to try and put the linebackers in a bad position and kind of throw it over their heads in the back, and Kyle was playing safety on the other side of the field, and I think if I remember correctly, I think both of the routes that were on his side were just kind of short, dig routes or something like that. They weren't going to come into the end zone. And so I think Kyle was kind of standing over there, probably realized hey, nobody's going to be coming over on this side back in this quarter here. I'm going to stay and wait for the receiver to cross over the middle and then be able to make the play on the ball. And Purdy obviously, thinks that he has that open. And, Kyle's I'm watching the quarterback. I know where this is going to go. It's not going to go here. I'm going to go make the play over in this way. Purdy didn't even see him. He threw it too late at that point. Mistake was made. Kyle made him pay and, stopped the drive completely and, prevent the score. Huge swing, obviously. And, I think that was kind of the start of really rattling Purdy because he was, thinking hey, this is where things come open. This is where, I'm able to attack these defenses and manipulate people in a certain way. And I think at that point, the Ravens were kind of just showing no, we know what you're going to do. And we know you can try to do that, but we're going to be there and we're going to make you pay. And that, they were able to recognize it and they were able to make those plays to really make them pay. And I think over time, obviously, you end up with 4 interceptions from Purdy. I think over time, you could really start to see that. It was limiting the Niners play calling. But 2, you would just see Purdy, instead of throwing guys open, he would throw behind, right? He would be I don't want to throw it here because somebody is might be sitting on that trying to make a play on the ball. So I'm going to throw it a little bit behind, be a little bit safe. And obviously that doesn't have good outcomes either. So threw him off his game. So yeah, excellent overall, and just from a defensive execution, film study, absolutely huge. I mean, we could talk about the other 3 or 4 of them, I'm sure, at length. Just how amazing plays they were.
Yeah. The first interception was like you said, great film study. I think it was Marlowe or it was PQ said Purdy's a spot thrower, and that sounds like a dig, but it's not. It wasn't meant to be, um, and they kind of took advantage of that. And that play is kind of the epitome of that. And then I think you mentioned something earlier, some of the talk about the other interceptions being kind of fluky, um, and that just sounds like sour grapes to me. Like the second one was what was it? Stevens and Marlowe blitzing off the sides. Stevens hit it up and Marlowe picked it off. And then the third one was Hamilton off the Marlowe coverage. That's Mike McDonald, you know, being a madman, what he's done all year, sending cornerbacks on blitzes, throwing confusing blitzes everywhere. That's the interception was a function of how the defense works. So that's to me, that's not a fluke. That's I don't want to say that's a common occurrence because that sounds like too overconfident.
I was going to say, I can't even remember a time where I saw like both outside corners blitzing like that. Like to me, like I mean, like I agree, like you know, there are exotic blitzes and things that you can do there, but like that to me was like that's a super gutsy call. I mean, especially like Amaro, I can understand, like he's kind of playing the slot. You know, so you can kind of expect that from him, but like you're throwing him and Stevens, like your top cover guys, on a blitz to be able to make that play. Like, I mean, that takes a lot of guts to be able to do that.
I mean, that might be fair. I think it was Baldy in one of his breakdowns said like this. The way it happened is, and kind of taking Marlowe out of the equation for a second, that blitz from Stevens was what forced was Purdy did the right thing in trying to throw to Debo in the vacated spot. The safety was back too far, or not too far, but he was back playing, you know, his normal safety position. So I think they just took advantage of what they knew the 49ers like to do. Um, I would have to go back and look and see if, you know, they send two corners before. Um, it's probably very rare, so that's probably a fair point. But I still think it was a function of Mike doing crazy things, and he's done that all the time. I mean, the what was it, the Chargers game where he threw Pierce back into coverage on the very last play and made Herbert hold it for a second. Like this is still like I'm sure you're right that the two cornerbacks from both sides come in probably isn't used all the time, but I mean I just still think it's it's a in the realm of possibilities coming from Mike.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't disagree. I think your point's well made. I was just saying, like that particular alignment just seemed right to me, but I think you're spot on. Yeah, it's not fluky to expect like this is just how the defense operates. We're not going to sit back here and play, you know, straight cover 2, cover 4 like all the time, right? We're going to be mixing it up with some different.
Did
spots.
You see the there was one blitz? Speaking of, you know, kind of weird blitzes, they lined PQ up at cornerback, and he wasn't on like CMC.
Oh, yeah.
He was just out there, and he blitzed from out there, you know, out wide, and that forced the throw early. I don't remember if it just resulted in an incompletion or what, but it was a positive play for us. Kind of those, you know, Mike McDonald just kind of drawing it up probably one day, and he was like, let's try this.
Yeah.
I do wonder, like, how much of this was like, okay, it's a big game. We would like to win this game. Let's, like, throw things at the kitchen sink, or, like, how much of it we had still in the bag, or I guess, like, how often do we have this in our bag, but we choose not to do it because we're like, we don't need, you know what I mean? Like, because we don't want to, like, put everything on film or whatever. I will say, though, that one you were talking about, Kevin, with the two safety blitzes, I called that it would be a pick immediately because when those two guys blitz, not only did they blitz, but then like all of the coverage shifted in a weird way. Now, he didn't throw the ball right away. That was the crazy play where Hamilton gets fouled. Like he gets like pushed down, fouled. Yeah, is on the ground for like a staggeringly long amount of time for a football play. Gets up and then gets the interception. So, obviously, this happened as part of like the second play of the game of the sequence, you know, so to speak, where it was scramble. But I think the reason they got the scramble was because everything looked weird. And that's a really good point you make, Kevin, like about, spot throwing. That's what he does. He's a really great processor of the game, Purdy, but it can bite him if, you break the rules or you change things. So McDonald was great at that. Maybe he saw a little bit of a wink out of the corner of his eye in the game prior. Saw it on a side TV. Who knows what they were playing at the stadium? But that was some great stuff to see. And even though we didn't get terribly many sacks on Purdy, we did get some more against Darnold later in the game. But the pressure was definitely on, and he was struggling back there.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like one of the things also kind of coming out of this game, a little bit kind of going back to impact a little bit, but like I feel like I've seen some commentary from some Rams fans, basically pointing at this game and being like, hey, like, why is like Stafford not in some of the conversations about like, best quarterback play? I mean, they went toe to toe with the Ravens, and obviously same defense that we're facing. Now, obviously, we could say like, yeah, did we throw the kitchen sink at them? Probably not, right? I think this game is a lot different in terms of like what we need to do. But I think part of that is just because Stafford is, a veteran who's been around for a really long time and is seen a lot more than Purdy has at this point in his career. So I think, to your point, Alec, I feel like, yeah, messing up and, kind of not playing by the rules and playing these, different coverages and things like that, like, for Purdy, who hasn't seen this, it takes him a little bit longer to be able to process what's going on in real time. Whereas if you look at Stafford, like he's going to know what's going to happen, be able to still make a play, even if the Ravens aren't, trying to throw stuff out and confuse them. It doesn't really confuse to the same level. Anyway, I thought it was interesting just in terms of like, like opponents and matchups, because coming out of the Rams game, I think, we were concerned going into the Niners game. We're like, hey, like these offenses are really similar. We're probably going to have a heck of a time, because the Rams ended up like really shredding us, and we were really concerned at that point. And obviously we didn't have Keaton Mitchell, so the run game on the offense is also not going to play as well. But I think it, because of the difference in quarterback play, I think that really kind of had a difference.
Yeah, I don't want to waste a ton of time on Stafford, because I could probably sing his praises for a pretty long time. He's one of those forever underrated quarterbacks. I mean, he, Megatron wasn't throwing to himself. There's a ton of highlight plays that start with Stafford, and now he's working on breaking the rookie record with Puka. He's a completely different quarterback than Purdy. So yeah, I think what you said is spot on. That's why you see a struggle a little bit more with a veteran quarterback who doesn't need things to go perfect to be right. I mean, he had that I want to say the week before throw to Higbee where he hit him on the sideline perfectly. I don't think you're seeing Purdy kind of make those throws out of a function of their offense. It's not meant for that. He's supposed to hit his 3 or 5 step drop and then get the ball out. So I think that's a big point of why this game kind of went differently. And then to go back to your original point, Alec, about throwing the kitchen sink at the 49ers, I think, yeah, we definitely unloaded some bullets to say, but I really hope that wasn't all of them, because we're still going to see some good offenses, and everything goes right, there's a good chance we see that team again.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think the big thing I have to say was the complimentary football that was played. The number one way they could have beat us is if they really leaned into McCaffrey. We didn't really have an answer for McCaffrey. They just ran out of time. We got high enough up that, with the turnovers, that they needed to score quickly. And, we were scoring at a good enough rate and take enough time off the clock that, it just wasn't really feasible to run like that. Which, like, I always, like, kind of push back on. Like, I think it is doable, but, like, near the end of the game when it was really, low on time, yeah, you need to pass more. So I was thinking to myself, I told Rachel, I think we were up like 14, or maybe it was even 18 or 21 at that point, I forget. But I said to her, I was like, there's one way they could win. I'm not going to say it out loud. I don't know if they bugged the room. But, you know, like, I was like thinking to myself, like, if they start running right now and really like dedicate to it, I think it could work. But I was also thinking kind of like what you were saying. I forget. Maybe, I think Kevin said it when we were watching the game live. But like, or maybe Chris, I forget. Someone said like, you know, the playbook has gotten shrunk down. They don't trust him. And like, you know, it changed the way that they were playing the game. And that's like, I think that was the biggest turning point, but they weren't able to really adjust, you know, so to speak. It goes back to that whole, like, you know, everyone has a good plan until you get punched in the face. I thought that was a huge thing. We were so physical with them, and they played a really physical game too. They gave them praises for saying they were the most physical team that they have played so far, but that's just like, that's what's so hard about playing the Ravens, man. It's like PQ said during his press conference, they play a style football most teams don't want to play.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I absolutely. I think, I mean, with all the interceptions in the first half, I think it would have been really hard for them to come back. I mean, also, think about it. Like, Kyle Shanahan, brilliant play caller, right? But one common criticism with him is not going back to the run game in certain places, right? I mean, go back to that 2016 Super Bowl offensive coordinator of the Falcons, right? They call up all those pass plays in a row, and they all have all this time left on the clock. The Patriots end up come back and winning that game. All you have to do is lean in the run game a little bit more to be able to draw enough more clock, and that's it, right? And I think that was, I mean, that's kind of like one of the master classes, I think, were McDonald, of like knowing, like, okay, if we can make, you know, throw out a lot, it's risky, right? It's risky to be able to put players in these positions to try and make plays, but I think he did. He trusted the guys to be able to make the plays. Guys did execute, got all those turnovers. At that point, like, I mean, coming back from that, even with the score being so close as it was, I think it would just be really, really hard, because, you know, you're kind of in their heads at that point. And yeah, the playbook is going to be just like so different. You know, but I think it was easy to see, you know, credit to the 49ers again. Like, it would be easy to see how this game could be different, especially if it's played again. I mean, just look at the first quarter, right? Lots of chunk plays that they were giving up. You know, it looked like Marcus Williams was going to have a bad game. He's lined up on Kittle frequently. Kittle was getting wide open, a lot of yak to be had. It pretty much didn't matter who got the ball. If it was Kittle, if it was McCaffrey, if it was Ayuk, if it was Debo, like, everyone was kind of feasting. It just was in, you know, when they would stack some plays together on the defense, be able to get them in third down situations, and then force Purdy to make bad decisions, that all of a sudden, you know, things started changing. You erase a few of those, that game becomes a lot closer, becomes a lot more, you know, a lot more tough. I think the guys are kind of right. It's just like everything kind of really went well for them this game, you know. So, you know, yeah, maybe a little bit fluky from that perspective, but I do think, you know, kind of what we've all been talking about here, though, like, there was a lot of intentional decisions, both in the coaching, game plan, and the execution, that, you know, all of it just came together and really had a lot of success overall.
Yeah. I think, you know, CMC, he did have a good game. Definitely won't discredit that. But I think you kind of saw the same thing that happened in the second half against the Rams, which is we started to rally to tackle, and you saw a lot of those like screen passes to him that, you know, would lose a yard, or, you know, go for minimal gains, that kind of put a wrench into that, you know, what you were talking about, which is like, keep feeding CMC. He's actually the motor. He should be in the MVP talks, not Purdy. I think that's why they couldn't really do what you're kind of talking about, which is, you know, keep giving him the ball. I think Rowan PQ, another masterclass game of tackling, being in the right spot. You had, I think we had another Van Noy tackle in the backfield on a screen pass, or a dump off to CMC. I think they tried to do what you're talking about, Alec. I just don't think it was. I mean, they definitely didn't, like, you know, just run 3 straight times with CMC, but I think they tried to force feed him the ball at points in the game, especially, like, as we were saying, Shanahan stopped trusting Purdy as much, and they were running screens and, you know, stuff like that. Very simple throws to try to get it to Purdy, or to CMC. One of the throws that Purdy did make a really good play on, kind of where the Ravens were kind of throwing the kitchen sink in again, was that one play where it was supposed to be a screen to CMC. We had it stopped. CMC kind of started running forward towards the line of scrimmage. Purdy took a couple steps to the left, I want to say, created that window, and was able to hit him hit him in stride, and he broke off a big run. I just think, if they would have tried to exclusively do that, it wouldn't. You would need excellent play from both those two every time. You would need something, great happening. And that, as we've kind of said all episode, that's not really Purdy's game. His game is to run the offense.
Yeah, that's a great example of that play too. Yeah, because I thought about that one too. Of like, yeah, that was an interesting defense as well. If I recall, I think Hamilton was in position to be able to get that. He recognized that the screen was going to happen and kind of blocked it off. Everyone else basically went back into coverage, knowing like, okay, Purdy's not going to go here. They're going to throw it over our heads. Like, let's go back. And I think that was, a great point. Like that was a source of confusion. Either like we had guys back there and, he just couldn't find an open guy, then pass rush get in there. He had to dump it off. And yeah, it was kind of accidental that it ended up going for some yards. But yeah, I think that was a great play too, of just like highlighting the, how the defense kind of causes confusion. Yeah.
Guess we'll end the defense talking about how our 1 year mercenary veterans were the ones who got all the pass rush. Van Noy, Clowney, and Urban leading with 2, which was awesome. Love to see it. And I just think like it's so special. That's why I think this team is special in a way. It's not going to be often that you have all these low-cost mercenaries producing so much, and then all these fourth year about to leave your team players or like, need to be re-signed, or you're losing on players having breakout years, or the best years of their career, etc. It's like this is a special team. Every year is special, but I feel like this year is going to have a lot of turnover going into next year, just kind of inevitable. And just I want to relish, this group of men.
I think I saw a stat that the Ravens are like top 3 in current cap that is a free agent next year, to kind of hit home on the, like, this team might not be even close to as constructed next year. And going to your point about the veteran mercenaries, I think that's how good teams are kind of built. I think specifically of the Eagles, the 1 year they won the championship, they had I want to say his last name was Babin, situational pass rusher. The other Bennett brother, I think, was on that team, situational pass rusher. I think Sue was on, or was it Haloti, or was it Sue at that point? They had someone, another big body, had been on the team for just that year. I think that's a very common thing of good teams. You're going to get these veteran guys. I mean, granted, we've had to lean into them way more than the guys that I'm mentioning from the Eagles, but it's a very common thing to have these guys that are 15 plays, 20 plays, just run hard for your couple plays, and disrupt the game. I mean, I would even say that to some degree that the 49ers have tried to do that as well, going out and getting Chase for a rental. Now they just signed that defensive tackle from the Chargers. And I think they have another, is Armstead on a 1 year contract in the Niners? I'm not sure. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not positive on that one, but the point being is, like, if you're a good team, veterans, to come in and make plays, and today was or the other day was Urban. It's been Clowney for most of the year. I think he's 2 sacks off of his career high in a season, and I think he's already beat whatever his career record for a season for pressures.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's playing great. One of those urban sacks was basically Clowney on that one too. I think it was Darnold ended up getting out of him, and then Urban was there to be able to clean it up. So yeah, they're all playing really, really, really fantastic now. I was gonna add there was one guy we talk about a lot. Certainly I really like him, Roquan. In this game, like statistically, it's interesting. I feel like he kind of mirrors Lamar a little bit. We were talking at the top where, statistically Lamar's season, like, not necessarily like high and above the rest in terms of just stats. Impact on game from like the eye test, yes. Roquan, I feel like this game is a great example as well of like, he playing a lot better than the stats show. I think he ended up looking, 2 tackles, 6 assists, so like 8 total tackles. I mean, it's high. It's not like a super high, game for him. I mean, he's had games where he's had like 15 plus tackles. But in terms of like impact too, like there was one play. I mean, he had Purdy dead to rights. It was that, he kind of flipped the ball out and McCaffrey caught it, and it was like a tackle for loss or something. Like, I mean, that was a play that Roquan made. Like he should have had that sack. Purdy either threw it on purpose, even not a good decision, or it just fell out of his hand and he got lucky. Lucky, still a tackle for loss anyway. But but I mean, like, that was a sack for Roquan. I think there was another player too. Like, he had an interception where he was in play. Should have had like a tip pass, pass deflection or something. So, this guy, even though stats aren't always showing it in terms of sacks or pass deflections or interceptions or anything. Like, I mean, he has a huge impact on this defense. So, yeah, just shout out Rowe. Obviously, he's bringing the culture this defense and keeping these guys, operating at a high level. That's valuable. But his play on the field, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, is also, I think, continues to be super high.
Yeah, we saw during Wired, it's not out yet, but like the teaser of it, how he's like, we play, we talk with our pads, and he has a huge blow up in the flats and is going nuts. And I think the thing that's funny is, like you said, Chris, there's no stat for playing your zone correctly, so the guy can't even throw the ball, over you, or like has to throw it a little bit further to the right, and then Kyle Hamilton gets the pick, like that. There's no stat for that, but yeah. That's like a kind of impact that Roquan has as the middle patroller of the flats and of this defense. So yeah, just great point to shout him out because it's so easy to skip over him. I think we have the last couple of weeks, even though he's like always performing at a high level, similar to Lamar. They're just finally Lamar has his his guy, on the other side of the ball. I think that's what kind of a missing piece almost.
Speaking of stat watchers, I saw Kyle Van Noy was not arguing, talking to some random person on Twitter, because he tweeted today, like, I don't understand why Chicago would ever the craziest decision I've ever seen. And somebody was like, oh, and Van Noy also tweeted out something to the effect of like, I don't want to hear anything about like how you can take his money and make 2 guys and get more out. And then someone responded in typical like stat watcher fashion, like, hey, for the money that that you spent on Rowe, Chicago has 2 guys and they have 140 tackles, and Rowe only has 100. So therefore, the 2 guys are better.
You guys are getting the first pick in the draft next year.
It's like, yeah, no, that is not the value that we look for in Rowe. He does, as you both have been saying, he does the things that don't show up on the stat, sets the tone. This defense immediately changed as soon as he came in. I know it's been said 100 times. That's a difference maker. I like what you guys said. That's the defense of Lamar. He won't have all the stats. Maybe someone will be considered a better linebacker, but that's the leader of our team, and he does a great job doing it.
I guess we flip over to the offense. Let's talk about the MVP, Lamar Jackson, who, I felt like I had a sort of ho-hum game for him, which is like ridiculous to say, but it's just so usual for him to make crazy plays and off-platform throws, and like you kind of take it for granted. And that's kind of what I like set up the jump is kind of similar to what Harbaugh was saying in the locker room. I don't think that's just posturing for the rest of the team. I think truly to have an MVP performance, you need a whole team effort because they only care about the winners, right? They only care about the best teams in the league, and then it's like, what's the quarterback, of the best team in the league? And Lamar, I feel like, has been playing at a great level for years. And, granted, he's been getting injured maybe and missing ends of seasons for the last 2 years or whatever. In 2020, you couldn't give it to him because he just got it in 2019. But like, you look at it, if you're talking like most valuable player, you break out the words and what that actually means. Yeah, Lamar is one of the most valuable players in the league, undeniably, every damn year. And here we are again. He's doing great. And I appreciate that he gets that recognition, but I also just adore, like I said at the top of the show, how the maturity's there. And not to say he was immature last time, but it was new. It was fresh. Everything was the success. And I think this is a different Lamar and a better Lamar, even though his stats aren't as gaudy this year. I'll definitely take, the 2023 version over 2019.
Yeah, I mean, especially, having gone through all the losses, the playoffs and stuff like that. Like, I mean, he knows now, like, all those personal accolades, great, but they don't necessarily translate to, getting the ultimate prize, which is what he wants. He's what he's always wanted. But yeah, the biggest thing for this game, man, is just the Niners had no answer for his extended plays. They really didn't. There were so many times Lamar was able to escape the pocket. He was able to go in that Superman mode, that rush to be able to set up what we thought was a touchdown before the end of the half, and ended up setting for 3 for that field goal. Escaped the pocket, escaped a sack, and then ended up gaining 20 some yards on a rush play. Again, it ended up having all these 49ers just whiff on tackle. Fred Warner, who had an incredible game, all-pro linebacker over from Niners, very good player, just missed the tackle. Just was not in the right position to be able to make a tackle on Lamar. He ended up picking another 10, 12 yards off of that. Another play I thought was really great, kind of him extending the play out, ended up finding Gus Edwards on a pass. Gus takes it down inside the 5. There were no Niners who, had a shot to be able to get to Gus. Good blocking downfield, obviously. But they couldn't get to Lamar, and they left, these creases open for guys to be able to find, and, really just allowed these big plays. And, obviously, I think it's interesting just comparing the Ravens and the Niners. Like, I feel like the Niners were able to, have some success, not a lot, but some success in finding those on target throws and then relying on their guys to be able to get yak. Like Kittle is a great example, especially in the first quarter. He was just finding them consistently, and then he was able to pick up those yards. It wasn't like the defense was necessarily, out of position on those plays, but I felt like it is a stark comparison. Like the Niners are on target, the Ravens are off target. But they still, the Ravens ended up having more success because I think the Niners weren't able to adapt to that style of play, whereas the Ravens were, right? They were able to take away some of those on-target throws, force Purdy to be off target, had some success there. For Lamar, they couldn't force anything, right? He was just having his way. I think it really wasn't until the fourth quarter that they finally were able to get some sacks on him to be able to stop those drives. But at that point, it was a little, too little, too late.
Yeah, and I don't mean to take it back to the stat watcher, talk that we've kind of been hitting at, but it's like, how do you quantify the Zay Flowers touchdown? I think it was Fred Warner is watching Lamar, and then as he's doing that, Zay is sliding in behind him for an easy touchdown. Like that doesn't show up besides the touchdown, but that is all predicated on the fact that somebody has to spy Lamar almost every play, or he's going to take 8 yards and it'll be 2nd and 2 or 3rd and 1. And now, you have to stop Gus, or another run by Lamar picks up 15. That stuff won't show up on the the stat sheet, and if Lamar doesn't get the MVP because of stats, that I'm not gonna lose any sleep over that. It is what it is, but like we it can't be just a stat thing, or we're missing a lot of stats. We need some new stats. Um, how many times did he have to be
Yeah.
spied that left every single receiver on single coverage than a guy like Zay, who is extremely athletic, or Odell, who's a veteran, who's capable of you know doing double moves and completely shaking off a cornerback. How do we quantify that? Open as a function of the offense. The offense functions off of Lamar. Like it it's not a hard conversation to have. Like, but I know that those who have other candidates that they want to win will point to those stats.
I will say it was like, the game started off. It felt like the lights were a little bright. That boneheaded play where he drops back 15 yards into the end zone, gets tripped by a ref, which I feel like there should be a provisioning for. Like, apparently, the game just like keeps going on, but like, I don't know, man. If a ref trips an offensive player, it's like 12 men on the field. That's how I see it. And vice versa. At the least, replay the down. Like I don't love it. Doesn't happen often, obviously, but I don't love that. It's honestly impressive. It doesn't happen more often. Good job on the refs to get the heck out of the way. But yeah, man. Like, I was just like at a loss for words when that happened, and just like I thought it was bad that he kept rolling backwards and backwards. It was like, how are you gonna get the ball back to the line of scrimmage? Like, you're running to the left. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this didn't look like it was playing out well. But luckily, in the classic fashion that is sports talking points, it's like, oh, we won. We put that under the rug. No one cares. If we lose by 2 points, like, that's all that anyone talks about. So I'm glad it didn't end up mattering, so to speak, and that Lamar still ended up having a 100 point or 105.9 QB rating, but definitely hate to see it. One of those 2 sacks on the day, and that's tough. And I also thought Lamar, if we're just being nitpicky, like, he didn't run that great. He had that one amazing vintage Lamar run for 30 yards, but otherwise he ran for 2.5 yards a carry, got stuffed at the goal line. Not saying that's necessarily his fault, but like, it wasn't like a great game for him running. I thought in general the running game wasn't that great in this game. Wasn't something we could lean on and ice the team, and gave him an opportunity to score 2 touchdowns at the end of the game. Obviously it didn't happen, but like, there was a shot, right? And for all the love Lamar's getting, I feel like this offense didn't quite pass all the tests I gave it, going into the game, as far as, can you ice them on that, last drive to really end the game? Can you, score a touchdown at the end of the half, not a field goal, to like, really like, put the stops on them? And, it's nitpicky stuff, obviously, but it's stuff that you want to see them clean up a bit. 28-yard field goals are the worst. That's not what we want to see as time expires. We want to see touchdowns. And I still want to see, just a little bit more efficiency out of this offense, a little bit more of that killer instinct. But like I said, kind of going into this game, that's, God bless the defense giving us these short fields and these turnovers. I was like, man, guys, like, is this offense really going to be that productive without Keaton? Like, are they going to be able to figure it out, in this week, to like how to make explosive plays? And obviously lead on Zay, and 13 targets for 9 catches, 72 yards and a touchdown. Like, that's amazing, and love that we have that in our bag. But I don't know if that's necessarily even enough. Like, I want to see more. I really do. I want to see more people involved. It kind of, likely had a nice game, but other than that, it's like all the other contributors really had weak games. Maybe Aguilar, you could say, in his limited snap count, good impact. I could go and buy that. There are explosives out of Gus, that huge catch across the field. Love that. But like, that's not really, repeatable. I like seeing repeatable things. It's like, okay, that happened, but it's not like your average, tempo play. So yeah, I guess like all that to say, I feel like this offense still has room to grow, which is excellent. You're winning football games. You're still scoring 30 some points, but I want to see a little bit more.
I think there's a lot to unpack there, but I think you're getting at a concern that I also had. And I feel like I kind of want to take it back to the play that Kfisch mentioned, because I feel like that kind of encapsulates what Munkin had to do to be able to adapt to Keaton going down and not having as irreliable of a run game. I think, and the answer for that play was basically confusion of alignment. I think was really that made that play work. And I think it was Orlovsky. I think Kfisch. I think you posted this in our group chat before, but basically, like, Stanley had swapped places with Kohler, so Kohler is in the left tackle spot, Stanley's out wide, but they're aligned correctly. But it wasn't just that; it was like they exited the huddle with only a couple seconds left, so they got set, which was incredible. Thinking back to these Roman offenses where illegal formations were all the rage, right? So they were able to get that. They were able to get aligned only with a couple seconds left, not have a penalty on that. The Niners were obviously confused, like, what the heck is going on? Who's covering what? So they have that point of confusion, and then they end up faking, I guess, a toss to the right to Edwards, and Lamar is able to going right, and everyone is flowing right to be able to that play, and then Lamar just throws it to Zay, behind everybody, to be able to get that touchdown. It's a great example of, like, one, like, you have the deception on alignment, which is just executed extremely well, and two, you have the threat of this run game, which, to Niners credit, like, yeah, you have to cover it. Like, you do have to respect it. But, the stats for this game said, the Ravens run game was not that successful, right? So I think that in the short term really worked. But those sort of trick plays, I think, are going to get harder and harder to have happen, right? And so that's kind of where I think where you're trying to go, Alec, is basically like, yeah, it did work this game and it worked really well, and like that's awesome, but that's not sustainable, right? You can't continue to have these sort of trick plays, if defenses aren't going to respect your run game, right? So yeah, they're working on it. Like, the Justice Hill involvement, he definitely got involved a little bit more, and I think varying success. I think the biggest thing with him, man, is just getting tripped up really easily. Like, I feel like you can always get him in the backfield. Like, you'd like to see him get a few more yards out of things. I'm not sure how much we can have, from him in that situation. Gus, I still think is kind of doing Gus things, but he has a limit on, I think, like, just the explosiveness that you're going to get. Obviously, he doesn't have those legs like Keaton did, but I think they'll figure it out. I think though, kind of back to your point, Alec, I think it probably is going to be a heavy dose of Zay, because he's got that sort of, he's got that twitchiness and explosion that he can take a screen and be able to get like 9-10 yards out of it. And if that's what you need for a run game, I mean, other teams have made it work. They can use the short passing game as a run game. That might be our best option now, in terms of like a balanced offense. But bottom line, it worked for the Niners, but yeah, there's definitely room to grow. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, as you were kind of talking, I was thinking about, the Tom Brady offenses that never had a, much of a run game, and he really just used short passes, and we've seen the Ravens do that. I think on the 4-minute drill against the Rams, it wasn't, chunk play, and then touchdown. It was 7 to Aguilar, 8 to Zay, 7 to Aguilar. So we could do that. We definitely haven't shown that repeatedly, and I think we're all kind of saying the same thing too, which I think I said 2 weeks ago when I was on, which is the Ravens haven't peaked. 33 points is really good for an offense we think could get better. That didn't play a full 60 minutes. I think what you're hoping for, which is full 60 minutes, isn't going to happen from a Harbaugh led team. I think in year what are we, 16 of Harbaugh, they let off the gas. Like, there are very few games you point to and you're like, all right, they just kept pouring it on. I think of the Lions game, that one felt like we kind of just kept our foot on their throats. But I think towards the fourth quarter, they stopped kind of playing the full complement of plays. Let's just get it to, triple zeros. And as a Ravens fan, that'll always be frustrating. And I'm hoping that's all it is. That's my My bright
Yeah.
eye.
No, you're right though. You definitely do change your play calls near the end of the game. Like it was by end of third quarter. We're like, all right, like we should win this game. We're up by a ton. It's just now a matter of burning clock. And they did have a successful drive. That last drive, you only got 3 points out of it, but they like took 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes off the clock, and we were like, well done. That's like exactly what we needed. So definitely get and respect that's what happens. Because, yeah, they had those 2 touchdowns in 7 seconds. Incredible. 7 seconds of game time. How do you do that? Get 2 touchdowns. It's like the earlier in the day against the Chiefs, the 2 back-to-back plays, touchdowns, the fumble and then the pick 6. So we had a similar, massive point swing. It was, 16-12, and then not that long later, 30-12, and definitely changed the course of the game a bit. So definitely, game flow always matters too when you talk about these things. You can't, offense doesn't get to choose what kind of field it gets, and also what the defense is doing. If the defense is dominating, like you don't need to do that. You're just trying to get points and burn clock, and hopefully that will be good. So I get it, man. I understand. It's just these little. I'm sure that they want to tighten these things up too, because you can't take anything for granted any given drive.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if they were going to go on that fourth down where Lamar was stopped on the like 1 or the 2. He just kind of ran into the wall. I think if the game was closer, there would have been a real decision to be made there. And by the fact that they just took the 28-yard field goal, kind of told you how they felt about the game at that point.
Yeah, they were like, we don't want it to be 3 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns and a field goal. We want it to be 3 touchdowns. It's three possessions, but like we'd rather make it 3 touchdowns there and just know it rather than have them backed up at the 1 or whatever with that play. So I get, that's fine. I think that was a fine maneuver. I was okay with it, even though like like you said, Kevin, like you kind of want to like stomp on their throat. You want another touchdown celebration. Which at first the Grinch celebration by Zay and Isaiah likely I didn't know what the heck they were doing, but it looked like.
Okay.
I eventually figured it out. Yeah, they were
sense.
like grabbing things, throwing it in their bag, and running off with
He
it.
kicked open the door. They were throwing the presents in the bag, and he clearly ran away with a very heavy pack of presents.
Beautiful.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, I didn't realize that until now either. I guess I missed that tweet.
My favorite is always.
Yeah, I wonder if they like prepped the social teams like this. These are our planned, our planned celebrations, barring catches.
I think Likely said him and Zay do talk about it. That's how they got the Lamar celebration. I want to say 2 games ago. I don't know if, where he Likely was pretending to look at his wristband and then motion over Zay. So they're definitely thinking about it. I mean, I think what Zay had, a couple flower based celebrations. So they're definitely thinking about it.
Yeah. Offensive line. I think we got to give a shout out to them as well. Continuing to block well, give Lamar time to be able to throw downfield. It's one criticism I think of the game of their game, especially earlier in the season that we kind of talked about of just deep passing game didn't really work. Felt like the either Lamar or Monken just kind of didn't trust that Lamar would be able to get time, be able to make plays downfield. I feel like this is another game in a row where Lamar had plenty of time. And, obviously, he was able to escape the pocket in some situations and extend the play even further. But even when he is in the pocket, I think he's getting the time that he needs to be able to make the throws. And, that's huge, especially with the, Niners defensive line is very good. Bosa, very quiet. Hargrave was pretty quiet. They only ended up with 2 sacks. That's pretty huge. I thought Moses particularly played pretty well. I feel like there was a play where I saw Ricard blocking Bosa one-on-one, and I was surprised that like Bosa wasn't doing anything. I don't know what the situation was, if Bosa was supposed to be rushing in that situation, but I was like, Ricard's got him. Like, that's pretty cool. You don't really see that too often. But overall, shout out those guys, offensive line. Only a couple penalties, I think, maybe one or two from Simpson, if I recall. He had the one hand as a face penalty, which wasn't great. I think Stanley had another one as well. Those do happen. Obviously, you don't want to see those, but overall, I think I played pretty well.
Yeah, I think you saw way less bull rushes of Stanley ending up in Lamar's lap, so that's always positive. There was definitely still some of them. I also saw they kind of gave Bosa the Donald treatment. A couple of times he was double teamed with a tight end chipping as well. So they were definitely determined not to let him ruin the game. But I think this O-line did just enough today. I wouldn't give them a gold star for it, but it's it's definitely was better than the last couple weeks, and I think it's always helped out by Lamar and his running ability.
Yeah, I love it, man. It makes me happy that the line probably is what it is at this point, but it looks like we have some ways to mitigate against some of the best pass rushes that there are. So I guess we'll take it. There's always going to be a chink in the armor, and that left side of the line is always going to have their problems. McCary hopefully isn't hurt too bad. Sounds like it wasn't a bad injury there, but I was glad that Stanley was able to come in and keep up the play and not that's kind of why we have that procedure we're doing right now of those two guys. Falele getting some more snaps, I think it's great for his development. And yeah, I think upgrading Simpson in the offseason is a priority. Obviously, it's really hard to do much, allegedly, with the cap situation, but I think they can figure it out. And hopefully, we'll see, if Cleveland plays, better, or ends up replacing Zeitler if he goes in free agency, et cetera. There's going to be a lot of turnover on the line. That's for sure. There's every year there's the consistency metric of returning linemen, and we're definitely going to have an upheaval, it seems. So it's time for us to start figuring out those pieces. Obviously, I guess for the future, but enjoy what we have right now. Want to roll into MVPs?
Yeah, I was going to say at this point, let's go into MVPs.
Kevin, who you got
as our fill-in correspondent?
I don't want to take the easy one of Lamar, so I'm trying to think of someone else, and I don't want to do Hamilton. Just kind of feels easy, so I'm gonna put Marlowe MVP. I think you saw his comeback to CB1 status. He had an outstanding game. The one Hamilton interception was because Marlowe was playing defense for like 10 seconds, and he was right there in the hip of whatever wide receiver it was. I think he had a great game. He got an interception for being in the right place. The only thing I would critique was the lack of tackling on Debo on those two hard hits. But yeah, I think it was a great game for him, and just trying to go away from the obvious ones. So that's my pick.
I gotta go Lamar. I feel like you mentioned all of them right there, Kfisch. Yeah, I could maybe say Zay, but honestly, I feel like it's Lamar. Talk about it a lot. Yeah, Niners just had no answer for his ability to extend plays, and his elusiveness is second to none. Yeah, he played great. Definitely one of his best games this year.
And I feel attacked by Kevin because I was going to go Hamilton. I'm in the bag for him. But I think the thing is with Hamilton, right? He has two huge interceptions, great plays at the line of scrimmage, and made us all gasp when he got injured. But it seems like he might have escaped anything serious. And to me, there's probably only two players other than Hamilton that I'm most scared about losing at this point. And he might not be, and he honestly might be number two. So I think that means a lot, and that's why he needs to be MVP, particularly with the level of game he had. gotta appreciate it, gotta respect it. So Hamilton, you got my MVP. And like we mentioned, later in the week, we'll be talking about that Miami game at home, 1:00. Wasn't flexed. That's fine by me. Let's get this game, take our lunch pail, so to speak. Normal 1:00 game, and smash them. Finish what we couldn't do last time. We had a great game until it wasn't. The second game of the season last year, and this time we gotta finish. And I hope we do. I can't wait to be with you guys, enjoying the game, and let's hope we can get that dub. But until then, you can interact with us on Twitter, OneWinniePod, email us onewinniepod@gmail.com, or even hit us up on Threads. We'll see you there. Go Ravens.